So let's begin with the introduction. So the reaction between H2O and CuSO4 give the copper sulfate pentahydrate, which is a blue vitriol. So the end product is known as a copper sulfate pentahydrate. So on dehydration of copper sulfate, the water molecule is lost, resulting in the formatting of copper sulfate monohydrate, which is a bluish white color. So next is a chemical class and types. So copper 2 sulfate is an organic compound with the chemical formula CuSO4H2O, as can range from 0 to 5. Copper 2 sulfate is aldehyde, bactericide, and fungicide. When it is mixed with the calcium hydroxide, it is known as a Bargatt's mixture. The International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry (IUPAC) named the active ingredient is copper 2 plus sulfate or copper 2 sulfate. So the other name is copper 2 tetraoxydosulfate. Next, we move to the chemical properties. The copper ion present in copper sulfate react the chloride ions belonging to the concentrated hydrochloric acid, leading to the formation of tetrachlorocuprate 2. The chemical equation for this reaction is given by Cu2 plus ASO4 2 minus, and it will form a CuSO4. And when heated to 600 degrees Celsius, CuSO4 undergoes a decomposition reaction to yield cuprate CuO and SO3 sulfur triacid. Copper sulfate is highly soluble in water with solubility values of 1.055 molar and 1.502 molar at 10 degrees Celsius and 30 degrees Celsius respectively. So the physical properties for the copper 2 sulfate. So the molar mass of the anhydrous is 159.909 grams per mole, and the pentahydrate forms of copper sulfate are 249.685 grams per mole. Anhydrous CuSO4 has a grey-white powdery appearance, where the pentahydrate has a bright blue color. So density of the anhydrous is 3.6 grams per centimeter cubic, and the pentahydrate form is 2.286 grams per centimeter cubic. Both hydrated and anhydrous copper sulfate tends to decompose on heating and hence do not have an exact boiling point. So anhydrous CuSO4 has the automorphic crystal structure, whereas the pentahydrate copper 2 sulfate crystal has the triclinic structure.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Nadira Farzana Metin Azmi, and I'm going to present about copper 2 sulfate as medicine. Copper 2 sulfate is used in order to help with public health and safety. Copper sulfate is an inorganic compound that combines sulfur with copper. It can kill bacteria, algae, roots, plants, snails, and fungi. The toxicity of copper sulfate depends on the copper content. Copper is an essential mineral. It can be found in the environment, foods, and water. One of the use of copper sulfate in medicine is copper sulfate are used as pesticide. This pesticide ensures that our crops are safe to be eaten. Copper sulfate has been registered for use in pesticide products in the United States since 1956. Next, it destroys algae and bacteria caused by growing algae in swimming pools to prevent athlete's foot. Athlete's foot is a common fungal infection that affects foot. Athlete's foot is prevented by mixing copper sulfate into flooring mixture of showers, locker rooms, and swimming pools to prevent the bacteria from being able to live on flooring. Other than that, copper sulfate also used to test blood for anemia. The blood is tested by dropping it into solution of copper sulfate of non-specific gravity. Blood which contains sufficient hemoglobin sinks rapidly due to density. So does copper 2 sulfate safe for human? Copper sulfate can cause severe eye irritation. Eating large amount of copper sulfate can lead to nausea, vomiting, and damage to body tissues, blood cells, and liver and kidneys. With extreme exposures, shock and death can occur. However, copper sulfate was used in the past as an emetic. Emetic is vomiting. It is now considered too toxic for this use. That is why the usage of copper sulfate need to be considerate, and you need to get an advice from experts such as a doctor. That's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hello everyone. I am Nur Amira binti Azmi. Is the next presenter. We're going to talk about how copper 2 sulfate is used in medicine. So the first one is copper sulfate can enhance the antimicrobial activity, which is specifically I'm going to talk about in pomegranate rind extract, or we call it short PRE. So what is antimicrobial activity? Antimicrobial activity is a collective term for all active principle agents that inhibits the growth of bacteria, prevent the formation of microbial colonies, and may destroy microorganisms. So why pomegranate is chosen? Pomegranate have high tannin content, which is especially punicalagin found in pomegranate extracts, has been reported as the main compound responsible for such antimicrobial activity. So from here we know that pomegranate is such a good source of antimicrobial, which can fight and prevent bacterial infection. So next we're going to see, this is a bacterial infection which is called Staphylococcus aureus. It's a type of germ found on skin, nerves of even a healthy individuals. So this type of bacteria does not give a big harm or impact to individual because it is only a minor skin infection. But this kind of bacterial infection also need to be prevented in early stage because it can lead to many other bad consequences. These bacteria over here are also known as staph bacteria, which can also cause and lead to skin infection, such as boils, food poisoning, toxic shock syndrome, and septic arthritis such as joint swelling. So how can copper sulfate help preventing this bacterial infection over here? So in a research study, by adding copper sulfate, the antimicrobial effect can increase moderately against the MRSA and PBL positive CA-MSSA isolated. What are these two? These two are the cause of this staph bacteria. So in the research study, it's shown that when we add copper sulfate in the pomegranate extract, the antimicrobial effect increase. So this causes the inhibition of the bacterial growth, and therefore the bacterial infection can be prevented.
Hi, I'm Haras. Now I will continue about the copper sulfate uses for medicine, which is control of parasitic infection as monocytes. For introduction, what is parasitic infection? Parasite is an organism that lives off other organisms or hosts to survive, and some parasites do not affect their host significantly and noticeably. They grow and reproduce by invading the host organ system and making their host sick, resulting in a parasitic infection. The name of the parasite in this case is schistosomiasis, which is also known as bilharzia, which is a disease caused by parasitic worms. The infections are caused by Schistosoma mansoni or S. japonicum. The worms that cause the infection usually can be found in tropical countries such as Indonesia, India, and Mexico. The impact of the infection worldwide is placed second to malaria as the most devastating parasitic disease. The parasites that cause schistosomiasis live in certain types of freshwater snails. The infections form of the parasite, known as Cercariae, emerge from the snail into the water. In this case, the primary host is the freshwater planorbid snail. You can become infected when your skin comes in contact with contaminated freshwater. Next, what is molluscides? It is also known as snail baits, snail pellets, or slug pellets, which are pesticides against snails, which are usually used in agriculture or gardening in order to control gastropod pests, specifically slugs and snails which damage crops or other valued plants by feeding on them. In this scenario, the copper sulfate is used as the molluscicide since it is acidic in nature. The copper sulfate is toxic to snails in very small doses, and we believe that copper accumulates in the body of the mollusk until it exceeds that critical amount necessary to cause death. A lot of procedures need to be followed. For example, the watercourse must be inspected first to count the average of living snails in the pond, swamp, or river which are considered as breeding places. It is important to avoid unsatisfactory results, such as if the amount is too much, it may affect the acidity of the natural water and lead to more dangerous conditions of the water. The copper sulfate is poured in the form of solution into the water. So, how can it happen? First, the parasitic worms, which is Schistosoma mansoni or S. japonicum, that are living in the water will penetrate into the snail's tissue as a host. Second, it will grow in the host body until the cell carrier are released from the snails into the water. Third, the cell carrier will penetrate into human skin, which will grow into our liver and lead to infectious condition. And lastly, the schistosomiasis will start to infect the human body. So that is how the parasite can infect our body. So that is all from me. Thank you.